Okay. Good evening and welcome to the January 17th governing body meeting. I will call this meeting to order, and we will see Councilwoman Ortiz, who is zooming in, who will provide the invocation. If you'll give her attention, and then rise as you are able, and then remain standing for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I was wondering if Mr. Braille Watson is there?
Yes, he is.
Okay, great. Braille Watson is a community leader and minister whose purpose is to grow communities together through music. He has dedicated his life and profession to cultural and racial reconciliation within the body of Christ and the world by creating impressive, interactive, and intimate experiences that combine public speaking, rapping, singing, and teaching to foster an environment for conversation and growth. Braille currently serves as a worship pastor for Fellowship Highcrest Church and simultaneously manages his own music brand, Brillianaire. I hope I said that right. He devotes time to his community through his involvement in organizations like Scent Inc., Young Life, Topeka, and Topeka Public Schools. Sunday services begin at 11. I've known Mr. Watson since he was a young man. He grew up at 13th in Indiana, and he loves the Lord, and he loves you, Mr. Braille Watson.
Thank you, Councilwoman Ortiz. It's an honor to be here with you all and have this opportunity to call us to action through prayer. So let us pray. Father, we thank you for this opportunity, for this moment that you have given to us. And since you have given it to us, we know that you have equipped us for the work that needs to be done at this time. So, Father, we pray, Lord, for courageous empathy within our leaders. That, Lord, you would give them a mind and a heart to see what needs to be done. That you would give them the courage to do it, even in the face of backlash and misunderstanding. And, Lord, that you would give them the empathy for those who are in need within our community. I pray, Lord, for all of those who are watching, for all of those who will be voting, for all of those who will be listening, and all of those who will be carrying out actions that affect the people and the personhood of the city of Topeka. And I pray, Lord, that great work will be done here today. May your name be glorified, and may the people be uplifted and blessed in this place. In the name of your son, Jesus, we pray. Amen.
Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you for the invitation. Okay, we'll move on with the agenda. If the clerk would read roll call, please.
Mayor Padilla.
Here.
Council members Hiller.
Here.
Valdivia Acala.
Here.
Ortiz.
Here.
Emerson.
Here.
Kale.
Here.
Nager.
Here.
Dobler.
Here.
Duncan.
Here.
And Hofer.
Here.
We have 10 present.
Okay. We'll move on now to the agenda item number 2, the appointments, if the clerk will read.
A is a board appointment recommending the appointment of John Geddes to the Topeka Tourism Business Improvement District Advisory Board for a term ending December 31, 2023. B is a board appointment recommending the appointment of Rahan Razia to the Civil Service Commission to fill an unexpired term ending July 17, 2027.
Okay, you've heard the appointments as read. Is there a motion before the board?
Mayor, move approval.
Move to approve by Councilman Emerson. Second? Second by Councilman Dobler. If you call the roll, vote, please.
Council members Hiller.
Yes.
Valdivia Acala.
Yes.
Ortiz.
Yes.
Emerson.
Yes.
Kale.
Yes.
Nager.
Yes.
Dobler.
Yes.
Duncan.
Yes.
And Hofer.
Yes.
We have 9 yes, motion carries.
Okay. Motion carries. The appointments have been confirmed. And we have the gentleman in the audience tonight. If we could have both of you stand, please, Mr. Reza and Mr. Gachis, is that correctly pronounced? Gachis, okay. Want to recognize you for your willingness to step forward and serve the city in this capacity. So congratulations. Okay, we'll move on now to item number 3, the consent agenda, if the clerk will read.
A are minutes of the regular meeting of January 10, 2023, and there's one cereal malt beverage application for Supermart El Torito located at 3000 Northwest Topeka Boulevard, and staff is recommending approval.
Okay. We've heard the consent agenda. The chair will entertain a motion. Motion to approve by Councilman Kell,
Second.
second by Councilman Emerson. If you call the roll, please.
Councilmembers Valdivia Akala,
Yes.
Ortiz, Councilmember
She said
Ortiz,
yes. She was just
Emerson,
muted.
Yes.
Kell,
Yes.
Nager,
Yes.
Dobler, Duncan,
Yes.
Hofer,
Yes.
Mayor Padilla,
Yes.
and Councilmember Hiller.
Yes.
We have 10 yes, motion carries.
Okay, motion is approved. Move to action items. Number 4 on the agenda, if the clerk will read.
A is approval of the City of Topeka's 2023 Annual Consolidated Action Plan and Budget in the amount of $4,300,000.
You've heard the item. It requires our action on the Consolidated Action Plan. The chair will entertain a motion. Okay. Motion to approve by Councilman Dobler. I have a second. Second by Councilman Duncan. If you call the roll, please. Oh, any discussion? Councilwoman?
Thank you. Just a couple of quick things. One, I appreciate the work. There was some cleanup that was needed on this. Appreciate the back and forth to get that done. Beyond that, I have a question and a comment. The question would be that we are included in this is reference to a full-time position with the EAS group that apparently is already filled, and then the addition of another position. How are those funded in this? How's the first one funded now? And then how's the second one supposed to come on?
Councilman, the second one is funded by general fund. We've absolutely been overwhelmed with the response for EAS. And so we made the decision that it was in the best interest of the community to add a second individual. And so I made the decision from that to fund that out of the general fund,
Okay, so that would be a budget amendment, or you're taking care of that for this year?
taking care of it for 23.
So if we approve this, does that mean that we have approved those two positions going into the 2024 budget?
You're never obligated to fund a position into the following year,
Okay,
regardless of this position. You're never obligated.
all right, just checking to see what the vote meant today on this plan.
Yes, ma'am.
And then I had one other comment, if I could.
Please.
Part of the back and forth was about what is in this plan and what's not. What we have before us is actually a reporting form to HUD, and it's been filled out this way and has to be and just cumulatively changed over the years. I would like to strongly recommend that we have a master plan for neighborhood revitalization soon. If it can't be next year, there are pieces that aren't even mentioned here, such as the code, how code compliance ties in with our neighborhood revitalization, the economic development elements of neighborhood revitalization as well. So just by the nature of it, we're working with the Change Our Culture of Property Maintenance right now and have people from 5 departments, I think, involved in that. It's an interdepartmental piece. It fits well with the idea of outcomes-based budgeting that city manager introduced last year. But I think overall, it should look at the present and the future. It should look at city funds, grant funds. This only reflects the HUD grant funds and mentions a few others. city funds, grant funds, private funds, and self-help and volunteerism, all the pieces that need to be there to make these goals work about revitalizing our neighborhoods, and also then address the infrastructure, the housing, economic development, and the community building that's needed for those neighborhoods. So just wanted that for a comment. It's too much to change this today, but encourage that for next year. Thank you.
Thank you. Further discussion? Okay. We had a motion and a second.
Yes.
We'll call the roll, please.
Councilmembers Ortiz,
Yes.
Emerson,
Yes.
Kale,
Yes.
Nager,
Yes.
Dobler, Duncan,
Yes.
Hofer,
Yes.
Mayor Padilla,
Yes.
Councilmembers Hiller,
Yes.
and Valdivia Aquila.
Yes.
10 yes, motion carries.
Motion's been carried. Move to action item 4B, if the clerk will read.
B is an ordinance introduced by City Manager Stephen Way concerning contracts and procurement regulations, amending Section 330.010 through Section 332.20 of the Topeka Municipal Code.
Mr. City Manager?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This ordinance is a request to modify basically spending levels. We're currently at a level of 2,000 to 5,000, and this would switch that top level from 5,000 up to 10,000, that bids can be awarded without, or contracts can be awarded without going out to bid. It's our recommendation to do this in so much as when this was originally approved, inflation has had a significant effect. The other side of it is we believe this will positively affect our ability to enhance the number of small businesses that are owned by minorities, women, veterans, et cetera. So this, we have found that the bid process is very difficult for small businesses. This will allow us to overcome that and diversify our vendors.
Thank you, City Manager. For the opportunity to have a discussion on this, is there a motion?
So moved.
Motion to approve by Councilman Duncan. A second? Second by Councilwoman Nager. You're pointing back there. I can't.
It's sort of
Oh,
like
yeah.
Eyes in the
Governor's
back of my
budget.
head,
It's
yeah,
okay.
I'm looking around. Okay. Now for discussion.
Right.
Any questions from the body? Councilman Kell?
Mr. City Manager, on this, like you said, allowing some of our smaller businesses to compete on this for bids and things, would we be even looking at possibly some of the bigger jobs, dropping those down into maybe having it where, let's say, breaking it down, it's a print job of 1 million pages, breaking that down into 5 groups of 200,000, because one small business may not be able to, do the million. It may just take up too much of their time and effort, and so is this something we'd be willing to look at as a thing to do to bid out processes that are larger jobs, to allow these, we're gonna allow them a seat at the table, I think we need to allow them to be able to work on stuff.
Good evening. I'm Leah Bowling with the Contracts and Procurement Division, a division of the Finance Department. And to answer your question to the best of my ability, engineering, public works, and other departments that have a large volume of bids generally do their best to break bids apart if they can, and if the job allows for it. So a good example would be alleyway projects or sidewalk projects. They separate those into different quadrants around the city and bid them separately. And so multiple contractors are awarded those jobs. And they do that to the best of their ability. We can't guarantee that we can do that with every single project, obviously, but we do look at that as we bid things out.
All right, thank you.
You're welcome.
Councilwoman Nager, did you have your hand up?
I did. Thank you, Mayor. I just wanted to show my appreciation that we're taking the steps as a city to go ahead and make sure that we're opening up the processes to support local small businesses, especially those who are have owners that have faced other challenges in getting to where they are today. So I just appreciate the work that was done on this. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Further comment from the Councilwoman Hiller?
Thank you, Mayor. Appreciate the questions back and forth on this. I support increasing the number from 5,000 to 10,000. In terms of affirmative seeking, I hope that we're looking for businesses to engage in our bid process, not just at the small business level, but at the middle-sized and large business level as well. I'll use an example that was resolved long ago, but Alonzo Harrison has HDB Construction, and they usually do big jobs out of town, so they're not on the normal bid list. But when we started doing the riverbanks and so on, they were interested, and we just don't want to. I want us to make sure that we're always thinking of everybody in town, even if they're working outside town a fair amount or otherwise, so that we don't miss the opportunities to engage our minority businesses of all and disadvantaged businesses of all sizes. Other than that, I can support passing this today, but some of the back and forth that we had was that a fair amount of the staff went and did a fair amount of just, okay, we can get rid of this, we can get rid of that, we can get rid of the other thing because we have it in administrative procedures anyway. It ended up, by working that direction, a little ragged in terms of the balance of making sure that the policy statements covered each of the different buckets of business and admin things were left to others. And so I would just encourage that we, when we're doing this in the future, that we do whatever stripping we want to do, but that we also back up and go, okay, how is this built? And if there's 3 sub-pieces, are we dealing with them all the same way? I'm absolutely confident that you're doing a great job and that the pieces are all working together. Just to comment on the policy rewrites when we strip them out. Thank you.
Thank you. Further questions? If I may, can you address, kind of following on the heels of that, with the changes, are they primarily administrative changes or procedural changes? And in either case, what will we be doing or the city be doing to make those changes general knowledge, really get the information out so that those who are interested in the bids will know that a process has been changed, altered, or streamlined?
So as city manager mentioned earlier, the largest change with this is that threshold adjustment. And that is the only change within these adjustments that will result in a procedural change. The other adjustments, as Councilwoman Hiller mentioned, are due to the old paper process versus our electronic bidding process and record retention process that we're using now. We've transitioned from paper to electronic. With the update to the threshold, we are going to host internal staff trainings so that all the staff understand the procedure, which we've already been doing from the $2,000 to $5,000 range. That's 3 quotes to the greatest extent practical. And then, of course, our office reviews those quotes before allowing the department to proceed with that purchase to make sure and validate they followed open and fair bidding. And so that's going to be done up to the 10,000. We continue to work with our program review committee to get the news out, to communicate with vendors. Our system has an automated notification process that happens when we release bid events. And so as a business, you would register in our portal and elect a code for what type of services you provide. And upon our bids being released for those services, you would automatically receive emails to all of those people who have registered with your company in the system. So you would get notification that there's a bid opportunity. And we're actively posting on the city manager's weekly report all of the bids that are open and bids that we have knowledge of, that we're working on, that we're building specs on. We reach out to vendors before the bid is even put out on the street, and that electronic notification system happens. Since it's so informal, we will do individualized reach outs to as many bidders that we can find, either it be Google search or through a cooperative agency. Also, other local governments, we, use them and our resources there to understand what vendors are out there. And so we're doing a number of different types of processes for reaching out to vendors and really knowing the market before we go out to bid, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I ask that because oftentimes in giving praise and recognition for the hard work that's done, we really don't get an idea of the hard work, all the detail that goes into it. And I think giving a little detail like that gives us a better understanding, not just for the body, but for the public at large. So I appreciate your explanation. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, I might add that Leah's been working with our partners at Greater Topeka Partnership to where we're doing lunch and learns. And so several lunch and learns were held in '22, trying to increase our vendor pool and get the word out.
Good. Thank you, Center Manager. Thank you again, both. Any further questions or comments? We have a motion and a second on the floor.
Yes.
If you will call the roll. Thank you, Leah.
All right. Council members Emerson,
I'm going to abstain from this, not that this would probably ever apply to my business, but just to eliminate any conflict.
Council members Kell,
Yes.
Nager,
Yes.
Dobler. Duncan,
Yes.
Hofer,
Yes.
Hiller,
Yes.
Valdivia Aquila,
Yes.
and Ortiz.
Yes.
We have 8 yes with 1 abstention. The motion carries.
Motion's been carried. We'll move now to action item C, if the clerk will read.
C is approval of a 2-year labor agreement contract for AFT Kansas Local 6406 effective January 1, 2023 through December 31, 2024.
Mr. City Manager.
Mr. Mayor, I'll defer to Mary Kuckelman on this one.
Okay.
Good evening, governing body. The city of Topeka has reached a tentative agreement with the AFT union, which represents some of the city's technical, clerical, and maintenance employees throughout our various departments. Included in your agenda packet was the final version of the agreement that we reached, and staff is recommending it for approval.
Have any questions from the body? Motion to approve. Move to approve by Deputy Mayor Dobler, second. Second by Councilman Kell. Any further discussion? Okay, thank you, Mary. If you'll call the roll, please.
Council members Kell,
Yes.
Nager,
Yes.
Dobler. Duncan,
Yes.
Hofer,
Yes.
Mayor Padilla.
Yes.
Council members Hiller,
Yes.
Valdivia Aquila,
Yes.
Ortiz,
Yes.
and Emerson.
Yes.
We have 10 yes, motion carries.
Okay, motion's been carried. We'll move now to action item D, if the clerk will read.
D is election of 2 city council voting representatives to serve a 1-year term on the Joint Economic Development Organization, JEDO Board.
Mr. City Manager?
Mr. Mayor, this is, we're looking for 2 city council voting representatives here.
Okay. Deputy Mayor Dobler?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I would like to nominate Councilwoman Nager.
Mic check, please. Mic check.
Hello out there. I would like to nominate Councilwoman Nager and Councilman Emerson. Thank you.
Okay. Are there any other nominations for the 2 voting seats on the JEDO Board? See no other nominations. Is there a second?
Second.
Second from Councilwoman Hiller? And we can do a roll call vote? Thank you.
Council members Nager,
Yes.
Dobler,
Yes.
Duncan,
It's the second time this month I filled out a ballot you didn't want to turn in. Yes.
Hofer,
Yes.
Mayor Padilla,
Yes.
Councilmembers Hiller,
Yes.
Valdivia Aqua,
Yes.
Ortiz,
Mic check, yes.
yes, can't hear me. Emerson,
Yes on Nager, no on Emerson.
for real.
Sure. Yes.
Okay. And Kell.
Yes.
All right. So we have 10 yes for Nager. We have 9 yes for Emerson, with Emerson voting no. So council members Emerson and Nager will serve as the voting members.
I know him, so that was the right vote.
Well, my thanks to Councilwoman Nager and Councilman Emerson for serving on the board. Those are important positions, and I'm pleased that you're willing to serve in that capacity. I also remind the rest of the governing body, whenever they have the opportunity, that they also can attend those JADO board meetings. Even though you may not have a vote, it is important that the city participate in those meetings, so, as a reminder. Councilman Duncan.
I'll just add to that, having served on that the last year, I go whether I'm a voting member or not, because I get to talk whether they want me to or not. But I will just remind everyone, and I think Hannah knows this being last year, but the JEDO rules have not been amended to allow for anyone who goes in remotely for their vote to actually count.
Yeah.
So if we need that vote, as the city are for votes, make sure you give your proxy to whoever is going to those meetings so that we don't lose that vote just in case. So, thank you, Mayor.
Thank you for that reminder. Okay. Councilwoman Hiller.
If I could follow up on your comments, we all are members of JADO. There is a member roster and then voting members, and so it really is important to stay with that, participate. I have found that I can count on my colleagues to vote just fine, but that the participation of as many of us as possible is really valuable in a lot of ways.
Thank you. Okay, move on to the next item. 4E, if the clerk will read.
E is an ordinance introduced by City Manager Stephen Wade, amending the district map referred to and made a part of the zoning ordinances by Section 1850050 of the Topeka Municipal Code by providing for certain changes in zoning on property located at 3300 Southwest Van Buren Street from I-1 Light Industrial District to O&I 2 Office and Institutional District.
Mr. City Manager.
Mr. Mayor, this comes to the council at the recommendation of the Planning Commission.
Okay. For this particular item, I am required to ask and to, for any ex parte communications related to this item. So, prior to proceeding with the vote, each member of the governing body who has engaged in ex parte communication with any individual, either in favor of or against the matter being considered, must state that the communication occurred and indicate that even in light of having engaged in the communication, they were able to fairly, objectively, and impartially consider the measure based only upon the evidence provided on the record. The record includes the Planning Commission minutes, the staff report and its attachments, the public comments made during the Planning Commission hearing, and similar relevant information related to that matter. So having read that, I ask the governing body members, has anyone had an ex parte communication with regards to that? Councilman Emerson?
Yes, I have, Mayor. I was contacted by a couple opponents of this. Nevertheless, I can still feel I can render an impartial decision.
Okay, thank you, sir. Councilman Kell and Deputy Mayor Dobler.
Yes, I've been contacted and spoke with the person that brought this up, and then people in opposition had conversations with them, but feel like it can make a fair and partial decision.
Thank you. Deputy Mayor?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Likewise, I've had a phone call and several emails, and I feel like I can make an unbiased decision. Thank you.
Councilwoman Valdivia Alcala.
Thank you, Mayor. I received a phone call opposing this, and I feel that I can still make an objective, impartial decision.
Okay, thank you, Councilwoman. Any? Councilwoman Nager.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I did receive a phone call as well in opposition, and I do believe that I can make an impartial decision.
Okay. Councilman Duncan.
I've had emails, phone calls, and phone messages from individuals on both sides of this issue, but I'm confident I can make an impartial decision.
Thank you, sir. Any further revelations?
Yep.
Oh, Councilman Ortiz.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I've received phone calls, emails from proponents and that are and opponents, and I can make a sound decision.
Thank you. Councilwoman Hiller.
I think we all got emails from various parties. And I too had a couple of phone calls and feel that I can make an impartial decision.
Thank you. Okay. All right. Now, we see the item before us. Is there a motion to approve?
Sylvia's got her hand up.
Councilwoman Ortiz?
I'll make a motion for the sake of discussion.
Okay. Okay, motion to approve by Councilwoman Ortiz, second by Councilman Kell. Discussion. Councilwoman Ortiz?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This question is for Attorney Amanda Stanley. Amanda, I had emailed you an amendment protest petition, is that correct?
I believe you emailed me a version that then got filed with this county or with the city clerk and has been passed out.
So does this change in any type of way?
No, they filed a legal protest petition that was included in the packet. So what that valid protest petition does is it ups the voting requirements tonight. So because a valid protest petition was filed, it takes 8 votes to approve. Sorry, turned it over. I got it. Okay. 8 votes to amend or 7 votes to reject, which is a higher vote count than would be normal because a valid protest petition was filed.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Councilwoman Hiller?
It's a question. Usually we have a presentation, at least a brief one, of the facts and issues that are at hand. Are we not doing that this evening, or?
I don't have anyone on the agenda for that. City Manager?
Can we?
Yes, actually, staff should come up and present so that you know what you're voting on based off golden factors.
Okay. And before the vote, I'll give the voting options that we have available to us.
Dan Warren coming up, sir.
Sorry, we're trying to adjust without a bill finder.
Right.
Council, the case is a rezoning from an industrial zoning district to an office and institutional to permit a community living facility. Just to kind of recap the nature of the area, we have industrial zoning in that area, but it's been developed as office uses. So that's one of the considerations here. We really don't have an industrial use of property in that area. If we look at the comprehensive plan, it notes this area as a large commercial area. And what we note in the staff report about the comprehensive plan is that office uses are appropriate within this kind of large commercial area. So the zoning district is appropriate for the area based on the use of the property, based on the comprehensive plan. Some of the other things to note here, the parking is well in excess of what's required there. The I-1 district is what's considered less restrictive than the O&I. So zoning to O&I actually protects or preserves that office character more so than the industrial zoning does. Industrial would allow such thing as tow lots and outside storage and car repair and those sorts of things, where the office zoning does not do that. The use really is, while it might be women residing at that facility, it's not really a residential use. It's really more of an institutional use. And as such, that use in our use matrix is not really permitted, aside from a conditional use permit in M3, it's not really permitted in other residential zoning districts. So really it's an O&I where it's allowed, the C districts, MS and D1. So with that, Council, I'll be happy to try to answer some questions.
Councilman Carroll, then Deputy Mayor Dobler.
Now, why was this, just specifically this parcel here selected and not a larger area? Because what I'm running against, and I believe it's a great cause that's happening, but people's biggest oppositions right now to this and to what we talked about last week is just the spot zoning and just taking little areas and not, instead of, that, even if you would have gone 33rd South or just even the whole area there, why just one little parcel as that zoning?
So the zoning request comes from just this particular property owner, from no one else. So we're evaluating this rezoning based on who applied for the rezoning.
Further question?
No, thank you.
Okay. Deputy Mayor Dobler.
Thank you,
Then-
Mr. Mayor.
And then Councilwoman Ortiz after you.
So really, the argument that rezoning to O&I protects the area from uses that are currently permitted under the I-Light, since it only applies to this one corner, doesn't seem like a really valid argument unless you did a bigger area. Is that correct?
That would certainly help, yes.
Thank you.
Councilwoman Ortiz?
Mr. Mayor, earlier when we were having prayer, when the speakers are getting too close to the microphone, it's cutting in and out. I didn't hear the last part of what Dan said. So I want to remind the speakers, please make sure that they don't get close to the mics when they're speaking because it cuts out on our end. Can he repeat? I don't even know if he remembers what he said, the last sentence that he said.
Okay.
It was an acknowledgement from Councilman Dobler's question about a larger rezoning having a better impact on protecting the office uses in the area.
No, it was when you were summing up the area. So you might not remember. That's okay. It's when you were kind of giving your presentation. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Dan, do you want to repeat for the benefit of the councilwoman?
Sure. Quickly, it's a rezoning from I-1, which is industrial district, to O&I 2, which is an office and institutional district, to accommodate what we call a community living facility. I mentioned the comprehensive plan designates this area as a large commercial, and we note in the staff report that office uses are consistent with a large commercial area. The area is, although zoned industrial, it's developed as offices and also some institutional uses in that area as well. So the zoning to O&I 1, or O&I 2, I'm sorry, is appropriate from that perspective.
Okay. Thank you, Dan. Councilman Duncan.
So are all community living facilities considered, I'm blanking, institutional?
I think in our use matrix, yes, because they're not really permitted in residential districts.
Okay, so is a nursing home a community residential, or a community living facility? I guess what I'm trying to wrap my head around is, I understand that because it offers services of a specific kind and that it falls into the institutional category to some degree. I get that part. But the difference to me is we still are going to have people living there 24/7, regardless of what services are being provided, which I think is part of the concerns that some folks have expressed. So I'm just trying to, why if someone had come to us and wanted to build an apartment complex there, I mean, I'm not sure if we would have, I don't know what we would have said, I'm not going to, but we may have had some more conversation about it versus this because it's institutional. So I'm trying to just figure out what other facilities we would have said, you're institutional and you're okay to move into this area versus you're not institutional with people living there 24/7. So that's, if that makes any sense, that's what I'm trying to partially wrap my thoughts around a little bit.
Right, so an assisted living facility would likely be an institutional kind of use. We have other uses that might be similar to this where it's, they're taking in folks that are part of some situation that's not great. So it's a soft landing spot for people to hang out and live and be away from their existing situation. Those are probably more so institutional uses than a residential use, just right off the top of my head.
No, that's fine. Walk me through this process a little from staff side, because staff recommended this to the planning commission. So when this individual or these folks come to city and say, we would like to do this, and I have no idea if they owned the property already or didn't, I guess walk me through what those conversations are. Are there any conversations at first with, hey, we think we can make this work, but you know, we can foresee some concerns here. Are there other locations we could assist you with? I mean, I'm trying to figure out what level of service our planning side offers in terms of facilitating these issues up front before again, you can't see every crystal ball, and I don't know where you were involved in that process because I know we're in some transition. But I guess walk me through that process when these sort of things come up and what our role should be, and maybe the city manager wants to answer part of that in facilitating these facilities in this process.
I think from a sort of a big picture perspective, I think when we get these kind of questions, we're coming at it from a perspective of let's try to get to yes. So when we get an idea for a use on a particular property, we're trying to overturn every stone and figure out, hey, is this something that could work there? And then, well, here's our category. Well, it's not permitted in that I-1. But we know this area is office. It's not an industrial park. It's not full of warehousing and that kind of thing. So just looking at the area and knowing that, we talked about, well, can we support a rezoning to office then in this case? So there was kind of some high-level discussions at staff to talk about that and came to the conclusion that, yeah, because the use of the property in that area is the way it is, that we could get there with an office zoning. So I mean, that's, get a question, try to figure out, a way to get there, I guess is the.
No, that's helpful, because like I said, I'm not there. I don't know how that process works. So thank you very much.
Councilman Emerson, then Deputy Mayor Dobler.
Thank you, Mayor. Mr. Warner, can you explain, under the current zoning, the I-1, what are some of the permissible uses this could be used for?
So I mentioned earlier, so just, I guess if we think that particular building, office, they could possibly convert it to some sort of auto repair. They've got that big parking lot out there. Maybe there's a tow lot that could move in and use the building for office and use that big parking lot to store cars. Possibly a warehousing use to some extent. So there's I-1 and I-2 are really our least restrictive zoning districts. So there's a whole host of uses that are permitted within that I-1 zoning district that aren't really going on out there currently.
Thank you for that. And I guess part of my question, or maybe my thought process was, is it possible the applicant, and maybe this isn't something we can weigh in on tonight, but it seems to me there are some pretty intensive uses. I mean, I think you can have a construction yard with outside storage with an I-1, which to me would be much more, I mean, having a construction company, you don't want to have your office next to our yard, honestly. It's not, it's not nice looking with equipment and piles of, rock and stuff. But I think that's allowed under I-1, isn't it?
Yes.
So I guess my thought is, and I don't know how this is going to go tonight, but if this does not pass, I guess maybe there's an opportunity for the applicant to get with the neighboring and come up with maybe a compromise. I don't know, but anyway, just like I said, just a thought. I mean, it just seems I don't know. This use to me seems almost less of something I wouldn't want to have next door than other things. But it's strange that we have to almost downzone this to allow this use. So right. Okay. Thank you.
Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. First of all, Dan, I think, we as a body encourage planning staff to try to get to yes when there's an issue that comes before it. Doesn't mean we're always going to agree with it, but we certainly appreciate the fact that you try to work with applicants to get there. Having said that, I'm not going to be able to support this. I've been through the minutes, all the material that's been presented, and it really gets down to the the golden rules. I think it's the easiest way to say it. And, you know, regardless of what the current zoning is, what we're talking about is a zoning that would allow a facility that's really inconsistent with the character of the neighborhood. It just is. I mean, how it got that way, I don't know, but that's where we're at. All the surrounding properties are businesses, and a residential facility is just inconsistent with that. And even going back to the comprehensive future use plan, it calls out large commercial. And this really doesn't fit that. It's not commercial, it's residential. So I will not be supporting this. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Councilwoman Nager, did you have your hand up?
I did, Mr. Mayor. Thank you. I had some more questions kind of concerning what Deputy Mayor Dobler kind of has already touched on. I can understand why changing the zoning of this particular plot would go ahead and make it better match the use of the other plots around it. But I'm having a little bit of issue with talking about having an institutional, that's exactly what I have the issue with. It's the institutional use of this plot within more of a business park. And so my question is, are there stipulations or guidelines for this property owner and that kind of reconciles that asymmetry? The fact that they are going to be have a facility that is working with people 24/7, whereas these other businesses are Monday through Friday, 8 to 5, and that's really what they're using their property for. So are there guidelines and stipulations to reconcile that?
Thank you. In the zoning code, there are not. We have a definition of what this use is, and since it's a straight zoning action, there isn't anything else that really comes along with it.
And to follow up with that, are there different recommendations that the city can make in general, not necessarily with planning and zoning, to make sure that this is something that we can fit together more cohesively rather than sticking in this business in this area just because of the space? I can restate it. Don't worry. I'm wordy. Are there tools within the city that can make sure that we have some guidelines or stipulations of how to go ahead and make sure that this business has its area well defined and can coexist well with the other businesses around it?
I don't believe we have that currently. From a land use or zoning perspective, we note where these uses are permitted, and it's generally not in single-family neighborhoods or anything but our most intense residential districts. So we're giving some guidance from that perspective, that it shouldn't be, this type of use shouldn't be in a single-family neighborhood, for instance. So there is some guidance that they need to find office zoning or commercial zoning to do this use.
So if we were going more towards the residential side, we would have more stipulations, but because we went more towards the business side, we have less.
Right, so in the single-family districts, we have some quasi-residential uses and really what happens for those uses in those single-family districts, we limit the number of people. So we might say 8 or fewer or 12 or fewer, where this community living facility doesn't have a limit on the number of people. So that's probably one of the distinctions that keeps this one out of single-family neighborhoods.
Excellent. Thank you very much. My comment, just to kind of follow up with that, is because of that incongruency with the use of the land around it, while the zoning makes sense to go ahead and change, I'm not sure that this particular property use is the best. And the fact that there's already been the complaint makes me wary of where this is going in the future. So I'm hesitant to go ahead and support this decision tonight. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Councilman Kell and then Councilwoman Valdivia Alcala.
Now, is there any guidelines that we could put in place if we were to, we do have, like, it was brought up earlier, and I remembered about 4, maybe 6 months ago, we had a residential facility in a residential neighborhood over by the Jardine schools, and that, within a couple blocks of there. I can't remember the exact address. I've been spending the last 10 minutes looking it up, and I can't find it. But I know, and we just voted on to expansion so they could build into their garage. So is there any way we could, allow certain things, but we just put, make sure that we're following limits? Because I'm not sure if that facility there is going to be able to hold that many to begin with anyways. So did they even say, I can't remember where I saw how many residents or people they're looking at a time?
I think 20 and then up to 5 children, so I think probably up to 25.
Okay, I just don't remember seeing any numbers, so thank you.
Is that,
So, the example that you gave, the Homes Plus, the Providence Homes Plus, they could do that use by right with 8 people and not have to go through a zoning action. When they went to 12, they had to do a CUP, conditional use permit, and that's what kicked it into a rezoning action, basically. The things that we do, I kind of talked about it to maybe limit these uses as the number of people that are permitted in those facilities. You might look at, parking, make sure the parking is adequate. Really in our code, it's the use and the licensing that we use to allow some of these in residential, single-family neighborhoods versus not. I'm not sure what else we could do with this community living facility to limit it more. I'm not sure.
Thank you.
Councilwoman Valdivia Alcala. Councilwoman, we can't hear you.
We've done this before.
Can you call Councilman Duncan and we go that route? We can't hear you from your location. It must be your mic or Councilwoman Ortiz subject.
Don't read those lips. I'm not sure that was.
I don't know if she can hear us.
Yeah, she can.
Okay.
Hannah, where's your sign? We can't hear you. Where's your sign?
It's been recycled.
All right.
You get her?
Yep. Oh yeah, I've got. She's got.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, but you need to mute on your end, I think, and then your computer. There we go.
Okay, so I can hear you. I just find it extraordinarily odd that the last check that we did on my side was fine. So I don't know why we keep having this problem. At any rate, I would just say that I cannot support this as well. I think the way that this came to the council's attention, can you put that closer to your mic, Spencer? I think that the way this came to the council's attention was rather alarming. And I did have the phone call from the person that was very steeped in the community. And while I understand some of the issues surrounding this housing facility were NIMBY in scope, I think that the major concern is that if this zoning is approved, what it is going to open up this particular area, open it up to. So at this time, I cannot support it as well. So thank you.
Councilwoman Hiller.
Thank you, Mayor. I've given this a lot of thought and read through it more than once. And I will support it, and I'll tell you why. For one thing, we all need to remember that in any zoning district, you're not going to have all identical structures and businesses or residences right next to each other. It's just not that way. What we've got is, in this case, and hopefully we can bring the presentations like we usually have, even though we're kind of transplanted in the future, so people can see those districts of the zoning and the land use, because it helps to understand. But this particular property, this district that's all zoned I, has been basically dormant for, 20 or 30 years? And now things are starting to change. And as Dan talked about it, zoned I, the kinds of uses that could go into that building, but all those other vacant buildings or vacant properties is industrial. And that very likely is less desirable from what we've heard in all the testimony than having a controlled access unit that is a referral-based, secured unit for people to live in for a period of time. Again, none of our zoning districts are going to have 100% uniform. It's sort of like saying we don't want any duplexes or row houses in our single family, or duplexes especially in our single family neighborhood. There is a mix there, but even having a park or being next to a main street changes what the neighboring properties are like. This district has already started to change. And so I understand people pushing back and being nervous about what that change is going to look like, and this is in many ways the first one up. But already, for instance, the Foundry is there on 33rd Street. So you have events coming and going, more cars parking all over the place, more hours than just 8 to 5. So that is an example of the change that's already starting in this district. What has happened, from what I've picked up, particularly from the reading, is that the neighbors for the first time have started talking to each other about what they want this to look like. Because it is going to change with White Lakes Mall going down as well. It's coming into zone to be ready to redevelop. From what Mr. Warner described and others, probably what would be wise, this was just somebody who wanted to develop a particular property, that might very well be wise for all of these businesses that are now talking to one another to get together and ask the city to rezone the whole district O&I, so that those industrial uses will not come in next to their very stable insurance companies, financial advisors, and so on. But they won't all look just the same. And if people remember reading their packets, we have a number of office buildings in that district. This particular property, and if I understood the testimony right, attracted to some extent the petitioners here because it looks like a house. I mean, it was built, and sometimes people build office buildings that way, but it already looks residential. That's the existing building. So then what you've got is a matter of, okay, what is this going to be? It's not transient. This is a second stage where people are referred or apply to get in. They are screened, and it's highly regulated in terms of how things go for the safety of the people who are there, and certainly for others. So, and the organization has a good history as well, as the best I've read and understood it, from where they have operated these facilities before. So there are a lot of moving parts here, but this would be a step that is eligible within O&I zoning anywhere in town, not just here, not just in this neighborhood. And it's challenging to think of a bigger picture at a time like this. I get that. But really, we need to be looking at the whole redevelopment. In my notes to prepare for tonight, and I may owe her a favor, but I would refer the owners to Councilwoman Hofer, who has just been through that whole process in the riverfront, where it was all zoned industrial, and there are heritage industries there, but it's changing. And so they've just gone through the rezoning initiated by the city, in that case, of what is a new classification called D1, D2, and D3, and all three of those are total mixed-use zoning. It's going back to allowing a mix of residential, commercial, and industrial all in the same place. Whether you all would envision, I don't even know if you can put D down there north of White Lakes, but that mixed use has a lot of potential. It's different. It's more like an old downtown. It's different than what people have done recently, where starting in like the 1950s and 60s, the idea was to segregate all these uses, and that's kind of what most of us have grown up with. But it is reversing, and for that district to be vital, it's not all offices that are 8 to 5 and quiet right now, and it won't be, and arguably shouldn't be. One of the things that will happen with a 24-hour facility is there'll be some eyes on the community. There'll be people there at night instead of nobody there at night. And what I heard on the side in this case was that the Shunga Trail runs close to there, and there have been some problems that have been emerging lately of homeless individuals, cars getting ransacked, buildings getting broken into, and I can understand why that's making folks nervous. That's not who this clientele is, but certainly it's context for what's going on. Again, neighborhoods coming together. There was discussion, I think, in the minutes of people starting to get security systems and thinking about that already. It's all happening at the same time, but it's good to come together and begin to take ownership of that whole district as a district for the first time in a long, long time. But when you put all those pieces together, again, the applicant here had looked at a lot of properties to try and find the right place that would provide the services for the residents. It is true that that doesn't exist here. We did try a couple of years ago a different spin on how to do that zoning. We had the Working Men of Christ that wanted to do halfway houses in central Topeka. And the planning staff worked with us to develop a special use permit that could be an overlay on residential, and it was based on the qualifications of the applicant rather than just the use, to kind of make sure that if you're going to have that kind of use, that it was well managed. So if people are really nervous about this, maybe it could go another way. But again, the O&I will be a less intrusive, will much more match what all the opponents are saying they want to see in terms of the way the land use is from here on out. So hopefully that wasn't too much information, but it's a tough one to kind of think through. But it's maybe not even a first step, a second or third step of starting to redevelop that district, and it does fit with the general idea of the uses that the neighbors are saying they want to see. So with that, encourage people to reconsider, encourage the property owners that are worried to come together and do what you've already started to do. And I'm not sure who in the back row is the property owners and who are the applicants, but it's a good time to do that, and it'll work. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilman Kell.
I would recommend that what the biggest thing I think we need to do here, and this is my district, so I'm very familiar with that area between, in essence, 37th to White Lakes area all the way down to 29th there, that we go to maybe kick this back to the Planning Commission to make it a multi-zoned area like that, like you're talking. So then this way we can have more growth in there, because as the councilwoman said, there's plenty of office buildings sitting dormant right now, and it may just be a zoning issue that people can't get into, don't use those buildings or whatever. And there's a lot of open land through there also. And so maybe, and that's the biggest complaint I've gotten is the spot zoning. And I know one of the council people last week said that it kind of opens a can of worms when you do spot zoning, that where do you stop it at, and where does something that doesn't belong there at all get put there, because we've set that precedence. So I'd almost like to see this kicked back to the zoning commission and or planning commission, and be that whole area be mixed use and not just that one parcel. And maybe that can open that whole all those properties up for new endeavors for people to use. And we're not then at that point, we're not spot zoning anything. We're looking at revitalizing an area and giving it multiple uses to fit what's going on in there, especially with White Lakes being, on the cusp of becoming whatever it's going to become. We're allowing people now to possibly get on the ground floor there and start pushing that area up. Because initially, when we were talking the TIF district, this area was part of that first original map, and it got cut back to Croy, I believe, was where's the cutoff, and then wraps over to the old Gordman's building. But I love this idea because I believe we need facilities like this. But like I said, from what I've heard from everyone, and I think I probably got the most phone calls, emails, everything, because it is my district, is that this probably needs the best solution for this whole thing is we kick it back and have that whole area probably between 37th to 29th, between Kansas and Topeka, rezoned into a multi-use zoning.
Councilman Duncan.
Thank you, Mayor. I just have a quick question for staff and then 2 quick comments. I am curious, we had a few comments, and I don't know if we followed up or verified, concerns that not everybody who was supposed to be notified got the proper notification on the, do we know if that is accurate or?
I believe we checked our lists of property owners in those notifications and did confirm that they went out.
Okay, I just wanted to get a clarification on that. I've too have struggled with this. I don't know that I lean in support as it is today, but I guess I have a comment for both sides of this. And the first is, and this isn't just to the property owner here, it's kind of to all property owners, because I think we're going to see more and more of this, is you got to know what you're buying. You got to look at the zoning of the area. You've got to put it in context before you make the investment, and you got to at least do a little legwork, reaching out to the city and others to say, this is my idea, is it feasible? Because I don't want to see people making investments in areas where we have to then have these conversations in these meetings, because we're not trying to be a roadblock. We clearly, I think as a collective, will tell you we want this type of facility, need this type of facility in Topeka. So I'd say to anyone who's looking at their business or these kinds of facilities, you got to do a little bit of that work first, and I think that could help solve some of these problems. To the folks who are been in opposition to this, I appreciate the folks who contacted me with constructive criticism or concerns regarding the area, the look of the area, zoning concerns. I'll be honest, I got a few feedback from folks that I'm just going to tell you it disgusted me. I don't really care if you're concerned about the quote-unquote type of people that this facility is going to serve. You're wrong. It's serving people who need it, who are and are trying to be responsible folks. So that didn't sway me at all, and in fact, probably pushed me a little towards the other way. So that is not constructive feedback for our community or for your area. But I do appreciate those who reached out with more valid concerns on this. So thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Chicken. Councilwoman Hofer.
I've struggled with this one too. I see the office and institutional as actually being appropriate for the neighborhood. But considering, I did not realize how much was industrial around here. I figured more if it was commercial. I figured a good chunk was office. So I was surprised to see this map. I know north of there's several that are still industrial, so it is a very mixed area and has been for a long time. I know that mainline printing is down here at White Lakes, and they will stay industrial. That's what they have to operate under. So right now, I can't support it as much as I want to support the business itself, because I think we need it. Because I know there are many facilities that are geared towards men. We need some that are geared towards women. But I just can't see it happening in this location right now. I think there's too many questions with the neighbors, too many questions. Everything to the east that is not doing well with the homeless population. I think that needs to be addressed. Different subject. But right now, it is throwing a zoning that is in the middle of everything that doesn't fit. So right now, I'm just not gonna be able to support it.
Thank you. Now, we have options in this particular item in our voting requirements. And I'll ask the city attorney to explain them to us, please.
Sure, Mr. Mayor. Based off everything I'm hearing, the first option that you have, and I'll give all three, and then you guys can do what you would like to do. But the first option would be to adopt the Planning Commission in light of the Golding factors, the staff report, the Planning Commission report. That would be to adopt it based off those factors. Your second option is to amend the Planning Commission's recommendation. While you can do that on the fly, we always recommend that you send that back to the Planning Commission so that they can thoroughly vet amendments and make sure exactly what would be needed. And then the last option is to reject the Planning Commission's recommendations. So you could reject that because it is inconsistent with the character of the neighborhood, or it would detrimentally affect all properties as evidenced by your discussion tonight and the public comment that you have heard. And so then that would require 7 votes to reject. So to adopt it requires 8, to amend requires 8, or to reject requires 7. And if you wanted to remand it back to the Planning Commission stating a basis to look at it further, that's 6 votes. So I guess technically there's 4 options.
Okay. Deputy Mayor?
Do we have a motion on the floor?
None.
Yes,
I believe
you
we
We
do.
do, yeah, I second it, Sylvia.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah.
Ortiz.
The current motion on the floor is to approve the Planning Commission's recommendation in light of the report in front of you.
Okay. So I stand corrected. Councilman Kell? To withdraw her motion?
We'll vote it down.
A
Or just-
substitute
we just-
motion is also
we just-
always in order.
Okay.
So I would ask that either a substitute motion or the councilwoman retract her motion, and we remand this back to the planning commission. And my idea would be to multi-use zoning between the area of like 37th or Croy and then down to 29th, so that pretty much that whole area that is light industrial could be a mixed use.
As a point of clarification, if you remand, you are remanding for this single application. You
Okay.
can't.
Yeah.
Okay.
You
so
could
the-
direct staff to
but-
look at that as a different topic, but you're just remanding this particular parcel.
Okay, well, I move to remand back to the planning commission for further investigation.
Well, you haven't got the original motion
Yeah.
removed yet. Councilwoman Ortiz, you heard Councilman Kell. You made the original motion for discussion to approve. His request is that you rescind your motion.
I will not.
Okay? So we move on the motion that's on the floor now. But
As a point of clarification, was that just a request to remove or a substitute motion?
You might need some coaching through that.
Would the councilwoman even accept a substitution?
She doesn't.
That's always your right to make a substitute motion, so you always
Yeah.
have the right to do that.
I will not.
Then, before we went through,
But you can make one and get a
you can
second.
make one, and we just either vote for it or not for it.
Correct. Under the rules, you always have the right as a councilman to make a substitute motion, then we would vote on the substitute motion. If it succeeded, then it would replace the original motion. If it fails, then it reverts back to the
so
original.
a substitute motion to remand back to the planning commission?
Yes.
Well,
You would need a second.
If, Mayor, if,
Counsel,
I guess if I could ask a question of council on that, or city attorney on that, it says, in order to remand, we need a statement specifying the basis for the body determination.
Yes, you would need a statement about what you want them to look at. I believe the statement he said was for further consideration, which you can make that more specific. It would probably be helpful for the planning commission.
And Madam City Attorney, trying to keep this clean, without a substitute motion, could we not proceed with the motion from Councilwoman Ortiz and either vote yes or no? And if it fails, then Councilman Kell could make a motion.
You could absolutely do that if you would like to.
Yeah. Why don't we keep it clean?
Okay.
All right? So, okay,
Could we get a rereading of the motion?
Yes.
Mr. Mayor?
yes.
So what we've got is Councilmember Kell made a substitute motion to remand back to the Planning Commission for further consideration.
No, the original motion
Oh.
made by Councilwoman
It's
Ortiz.
just moved to approve. Yeah.
Okay. Is that correct, Councilwoman Ortiz? Your motion was to approve?
That is correct, Mr. Mayor.
Okay. Councilman Emerson?
And I'm sorry, Mayor, I guess just one more clarification then. So if we want to consider then remanding it, we vote no on this, and then we can immediately, he can offer us another, okay.
Yep.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
That's why I wanted to keep it kind of clean, make sure. Okay. So we have a motion and a second to approve.
Correct.
If you will call the roll.
Councilmembers Dobler,
No.
Duncan,
No.
Hofer,
No.
Mayor Padilla,
No.
Councilmembers Hiller,
Yes.
Valdivia Akala,
No.
no. Ortiz,
No.
Emerson,
Yes.
Kale,
No.
and Nager.
No.
Okay, we have 8 no, motion fails. Council members Hiller and Emerson voted yes.
Okay. Councilman Kell?
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to move that we remand this back to the Planning Commission for further consideration.
I have a motion, I have a second.
Second.
Second from Councilman Emerson. Any discussion? Councilwoman Hofer?
I guess I'm wondering what grounds we're sending it back on. If we're asking them to consider a different type zoning, because it's strictly this piece of property, it's not the neighborhood.
Mic check, please. Mic check.
Sorry. It is specifically for that piece of property, and you're not asking to go back and look at everything in the neighborhood. It's only that piece of property. So I'm not quite sure what you're sending it back for them to consider.
Okay, then for consideration of multi-use for a larger area that would allow for these properties, as has been put, are some office buildings, some are light industrial, that we can use a mixed use on those, so we can actually get those areas start being occupied. Because as Councilwoman Hiller put it, those have been sitting vacant for a very long time, and I was thrilled when the original TIF was included that area, but then I got pulled back. And so this, to me, would be the next best thing that we could do for this area.
I have a question.
I don't think.
Go ahead. Are you finished, Councilwoman?
I'm
I
just
don't wanna
wondering, I
interrupt you.
don't think you can do that because the other neighborhood pieces of property are owned by others, and unless they ask for it, you can't change their zoning without some kind of hearing for them.
That would be correct, Councilwoman Hofer. You're just looking at the specific piece of property. So if you remand it, you're asking the Planning Commission to look at additional restrictions or a different type of zoning. You can't ask the Planning Commission to then go look at other zonings who have not petitioned as part of this. If you wanted to bring an ordinance rezoning like we did downtown, you could do that through a different process, but not through this. So when you remand it, you are just looking at what you want them to change about this zoning. So be it new restrictions or a different type of zoning or something else, but it has to be about this particular property.
All right, thank you.
Thank you for that clarification. That was my concern, that we were taking on way more than we had the authority to do. Okay. But we have that as a matter of record, that if it passes, that's what we want them to consider for this particular property.
My understanding, and please tell me if I'm misphrasing it at all, is that you're asking for it to be remanded to the Planning Commission to see if there are additional conditions that could be put on the property to make this a palatable zoning?
I'm not sure, honestly. I think what I might have to do is rescind that motion and bring it up later, as you said, a rezoning ordinance, in the future. So,
Deputy Mayor?
I think Councilwoman Hiller was first, and I'll.
Okay.
I'm trying to listen actively to this and thinking that even with just as much discussion as we've had today, if there was, I'm not sure of the wording either, but if we sent it back for reconsideration for another strategy, another zoning strategy that could work, that would allow the conversation with, well, for instance, that overlay that was used in central Topeka for those particular places and leave it industrial, but also perhaps there's been enough conversation that the neighbors would be thinking a little more about what remaining industrial means, and there might be some other resolution that happens on the side. We can't guarantee that, but we could send it back for consideration as to whether there was another zoning strategy that would be more suitable.
For clarification, again, this is getting back and forth. We're back and forth on this stuff. I want to make sure if we're going to vote to send this back to the commission, that we have it clear what we want them to look at and not go outside of what is originally in front of us right now and start expanding. That's a whole different process. So if you could reread what?
Well, I just have a Councilmember Hill, did you want to withdraw your substitute motion? Because I thought I heard you say
At
that.
that moment, I wasn't sure, so,
Ask a question while you're thinking.
yes.
Okay.
All right,
Deputy Mayor.
fantastic. This is for Dan. I guess question number one is, did Fyander leave on Friday because this was coming up?
No.
I don't know. I think I'd be checking with him. If this gets rejected tonight, what are the options for the owner of the property? How can they try for another use, another zoning classification, a CUP or something like that? What and how soon can that happen?
Boy, the details, we have a certain time period to bring back rezonings. So I'm not sure how to answer when they could come back, but it's possible we could, kind of along with Councilwoman Hiller's been talking about, maybe there's a PUD zoning that is still, it's an industrial, but we're limited to this one use from the O&I. I don't know if that makes anybody any happier in the neighborhood, but it keeps the industrial zoning on the property.
The upside of a PUD is that it allows restrictions of use on the PUD itself, right?
Correct.
As you go through that process. So I guess my point is there's some other options. If we remand this and ask for some larger zoning, I mean, we're talking months,
Right.
if not a year or so to get that put together. And I don't disagree that this area we need to relook at the land use now, the land use in the future, what makes the most sense. But if I would think the property owner would probably appreciate a clear yes or no at this point, as well as options for them, as opposed to something that's rather nebulous at this point. So do we have a motion on the floor?
No, Councilman Kell had,
I haven't rescinded it yet.
okay,
Right, we
he
have a
rescinded.
substitute.
Not yet.
Okay.
In light of the information that's been kind of brought forward and this little bit of conversation, I think maybe the best thing is for me to withdraw my motion and look at other avenues that might speed up the process a little bit better.
Okay, so it's not approved.
Does his second allow him to rescind it?
Yes.
Okay.
Mr. Mayor? I'll make a motion to reject the Planning Commission's recommendation based on issues that I discussed in commentary before, just looking at the golden factors, character of the neighborhood, the use of nearby properties. I will make that motion. Thank you.
Do we need a second?
Motion, I'm a little, you're getting me here. We did not approve Councilwoman Ortiz's motion to approve. So is the matter still,
It's still alive. You don't,
Okay.
yes.
okay? So we have a motion from Deputy Mayor Dobler to reject.
Ortiz.
Is there a second? Okay, second from Councilwoman Ortiz.
For sake of discussion.
Okay, we're into discussion. Councilwoman,
Thank you. Amanda, does this kill it if we vote for it?
Yes, this would end the item for now. However, the parties could always appeal to the district court. This is a final decision, so if you voted no, it would not be before your body again.
okay?
I mean, they can bring it back, just not under these.
They could always apply for a new rezoning or a PUD, as Mr. Warner talked about.
Can you reach back and tell that gentleman behind you, Sam, I said hello? Thank you.
Well, now that I know his name, I can.
Okay, further discussion?
Question.
Councilwoman Hiller.
Maybe I would just need to better understand the intent on the motion. If we are wanting it to be reconsidered, we could just do that. You think it's cleaner to just turn it down and then they go back? You've done the planning commission thing.
Councilman Duncan.
I don't believe we're asking them to reconsider the planning commission. I believe by rejecting it, then the owner of this property now has several avenues they can start immediately on,
Okay.
as opposed to waiting for that process to play out.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Got a speedier process for them.
Okay.
Further discussion? If the clerk would read the motion for clarity, make sure everybody understands what their vote will mean.
Okay, so we have a motion by Councilmember Dobler, seconded by Ortiz, and the motion is to reject the Planning Commission's recommendations based on issues discussed earlier and considering, looking at the golden factors, which include use of nearby properties.
Okay, everybody understand the motion? Okay, move forward. We'll call the roll.
Okay, Councilmembers Duncan,
Yes.
Hofer,
Yes.
Mayor Padilla,
Yes.
Councilmembers Hiller,
No.
Valdivia Akala,
Hold on, can you hear me?
yes.
Okay, now I lost my place. Wait a minute.
We can hear her.
It's Councilmember Dobler's.
No, I know, but sorry, we're voting to strike this down, right?
Correct.
Okay, so I vote yes for that, to strike it.
Councilmember Ortiz,
Yes.
Emerson,
Based on my understanding of the golden factors, unfortunately, I need to vote yes.
Kale,
Yes, for the right to give them faster avenues.
Councilmembers Nager,
Yes.
and Dobler.
Yes.
All right, we have 9 yes with Ms. Hiller voting no, so the motion carries.
Okay. I thank the body for the discussion. I think it's important that we give everyone an opportunity to talk about what this means and what avenues that possibly could still be pursued. So thank you, Dan, for the information. I appreciate it. Okay, we'll move on to non-action items. Number 5 on the agenda, if the clerk will read.
A is discussion concerning the adoption of the 2021 International Building Code.
Mr. City Manager.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Our next two items are International Building Code discussions. The first one is for building, the second one, I'm sorry, is for fire. But Division Director for Development Services, Richard Faulkner, will be here to present.
Good evening, Council. I appreciate the opportunity to share with you. We're looking at moving forward with the adoption of two new codes, the 2021 Building Code and the 2021 Fire Code. This presentation will go over the codes that we presently have, an overview of the codes and how we use them. We'll look at neighboring communities and see what codes they have. We'll also discuss how we came to the conclusion to make the recommendation and changes that are in the code, our amendments that we're proposing with the adoption of the codes if the council so chooses. We presently have 11 codes. Some codes are just for residential and some are just for commercial. And then we have a mix. The codes are used for commercial and residential, the same code. So that's a list of the codes. And the ones we're looking at amending is the 2015 International Building Code and the 2015 International Fire Code. When we came to the body with the adoption of some earlier codes, it was the desire that we try and have the most up-to-date codes as we could. Right now, with us adopting the 2021 code, it's the most current code. The codes come out every 3 years, so the next current code that we would have been able to adopt is the 2024, which is not out, so we are adopting the most current code. We review the building code and the fire code together because there's a lot of information in those codes that overlap, and we want to make sure that when we adopt one code, we're not having a conflict with any other codes. The codes also allow us to provide safety for our citizens and also improve the quality of life for our citizens. In reviewing neighboring cities and the codes that they've adopted, as you can see, they're mostly all in the 2018. By us adopting the 2021 code, we'll have the newest codes from these communities that we're sharing here that we look at as far as when we adopt our codes. The review of these codes was done by our Building Board Fire Appeals. A subcommittee of that board reviewed the fire code and the building code. Also, we had city staff participate as liaisons to the board. It was fire marshal, myself as the building official, also the special projects managers over permits, and also the legal department. The board that we use is made up of contractors, architects, and engineers, so we had some professional people that are in the construction trade work with us on the adoption of these codes. We also took the codes, our recommendation of the codes to the Policy and Finance Committee, and they recommended that we move forward with proposing the adoption. And so staff is recommending the adoption of these codes to the council. There are some notable amendments that we wanted to point out. The continued exempt sprinkler requirements for up to 2 dwelling units in mixed use. This particular requirement has allowed us to permit the development of some structures in our downtown that have commercial at the bottom and residential at the top, reducing the cost, not requiring them to sprinkle those units upstairs, although they have to make sure that the proper alarm systems are installed. So that's one of the things that we've done to help with facilitate some dwelling units in our community. Also, we have allowed the continued sprinklers, if it's a 4-unit structure attached, we also have not required them to sprinkle those units also, which also brings down the cost of developing those structures. One of the things that the fire department is looking at and they wanted to implement is these mobile food vendors. They really didn't have anything that would address those, so they want to adopt or add into their code a section that will address these mobile food vendors when they set up, to make sure they're all set up the same way and that there are some safety precautions in place for these vendors. Also, they wanted to add some other code-related stuff as solar panels are becoming a big thing, and we needed to address those. So those solar panel requirements are also something that's being added into the code. And that's my presentation. I'll stand for any questions that you may have.
Councilman Kell.
Could you elaborate a little bit more on the food vendor aspect of things?
I can't, but I think Fire Marshal Allen can.
Good evening. In the fire code, currently, we don't have a lot that addresses the mobile food preparation. This will allow us to make sure that those vehicles are safe, so as we have them at large public gatherings, things like that. And it allows us an inspection avenue for that.
So does that cover just pop up in a parking lot that someone, I've been seeing that happen a little bit recently, would that cover those aspects also as well, that doesn't include a vehicle per se?
Currently, it would be a licensed food truck through the city. That is something that is required to be licensed, and that mobile food vending vehicle, a pop-up in a parking lot, I would have to do some more research.
Like I said, I've been seeing that a lot more lately, where people kind of almost doing their own mobile drop-off and set everything up and have a grill maybe, and that's about, but there are no vehicles actually included in that.
Deputy Mayor, and was there somebody behind me?
No, I was trying to.
Okay, you too, okay. Deputy Mayor, then Councilman Duncan.
Yeah, I was just going to ask the fire marshal, does that inspection include taste testing?
If possible.
If possible, very good, thank you.
Administrative privilege.
Councilman Duncan.
Thank you, Mayor. So some of you may remember some of these conversations about these updates started in 2021. They started here. Policy and Finance met in 2021 and had conversations with staff. Met last year, conversations with staff. We challenged them. They challenged us. Richard's a pretty laid-back, cool cucumber. I think at one point he might have wanted to throw a chair at me in one meeting, and that's okay. I think it turned out to be very constructive, and I think we definitely learned something as council members about this process that was important. But I really do want to thank Richard and all the staff who went back several times to stakeholders, listened to what we as a governing body were asking, got us to this point, got good exceptions in that will fit in with this, I think, and get us up to date, which I believe then as we update, get us sort of caught up, as you will, on a lot of these codes. So I just wanted to say, again, a very big thank you to Richard and his staff for putting up with us and getting the work done for us. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
Further comment? Questions from the presentation? Yeah, we have come a long way. I remember when we started these conversations and we looked at and said, why are we not so up to date? And I appreciate the hard work that it took to get us where we are. It's nice to acknowledge again that Topeka's ahead in a lot of aspects, and having the most recent fire codes is really something I think that is important. It should make Councilwoman Ortiz very happy. There you go, see?
I will definitely pass those comments on to the board, the volunteer board that worked with us on this. Thank you. We appreciate that.
Yeah. Thank you very much. No further questions. Thank you for the presentation in detail. Okay. We are done with our non-action items. We move to public comment. And for public comment, we have one lady signed up to speak, Ms. Emma Forbes.
Pass around or?
Are you allowed to show it?
No, we're not.
All right, this is one package.
Okay.
It's a lot in one package, so they would have to look at the entire thing.
Okay.
One.
Sounds good.
Good evening, City Council. My name is Irma Forbes. I'm representing again sorry. I'm representing again the Gil Carter Initiative and Highland Acres. I am here to beg, to enlist your assistance with the escalating problem that I have right in my backyard, right on the border, with the issue of the homeless camp. One person was arrested for outstanding warrants, but he has now since returned. And I saw him myself during the course of the early part of this week. He had a pickup truck dumping stuff right there, some of it spilling over onto my property. I don't think I should have to deal with this. I think there should be parameters where they should have their camps and how far from the property line they should have the camps. I sent around a package that you should take. It's a whole package because there's many pictures I took. Last week I stepped into a hollow area that they dug with their car because they're driving across my property with pickup truck. If you see ankle there in the picture, that's my ankle, and that's how deep the hole was. I twisted my ankle in there. So it's now becoming a hazard. Addressing me, I met one of the residents over there and I started talking with him. He informed me that he was not on my property, he was on county property. And he's right, he's on county property, but he had to come through my property to get there. So I'm begging for help because now that I have visited the campsite, there are things that was taken from my property and brought over to them. So now becoming more of an issue. So the photo speaks for itself. There are bicycles, baby carriages, clothing, dirty diapers, all sorts of things right in my backyard. Yesterday, I had 20 people from the YMCA. I had enlisted the help. They spent 3 hours to help me clean up the periphery of that area and put it into a dumpster. I don't think I should have to do that. I think the city, the authorities, whoever, they should act upon it and help me to do something. And if you cannot remove the people from the border, from my surroundings, then I need help to clean up the area. So that's all I have to say right now. I could send each of you, I have it on an external drive, I could send you photographs of what's happening over there. But I do need some help, and I need it very quickly because it's getting bigger. Thank you.
Thank you.
Tony.
We have no others signed up for public comment, so we'll move on to announcements. Madam Clerk?
There's no meetings for the next 2 Tuesdays, next 2 weeks.
Okay. Best announcement. That's good.
You're welcome.
Mr. City Manager.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I've got a few items, specifically in reference to the topic about procurement. Would like to note that on February 18th, from 9 a.m. to 10 a.m. in this room, committee members are hosting an on-site vendor workshop. There'll be laptops for vendors to use, so staff will be available to assist with registration and give hands-on guidance for navigating the bidding portal. Spanish materials, guides, and information are also now available on the procurement site to assist with that. I would like to note that the annual point-in-time homeless count takes place Wednesday, January 25, from 6 in the morning until 7 at night. We're asking for help ensuring that everybody gets counted. If a person doesn't have a home or knows somebody who is, please call 785-368-0168 so that we can get them interviewed. We talked at last meeting about starting making the weekly city manager report available for delivery by email. That is now available. And it's best of all, it's nice to note that Captain Forshee has been released from the hospital. We certainly send him well wishes and thank you for his service to our community.
Can I ask, when you're doing that homeless count, that yearly count that we do, I assume at that time from hearing what we just heard, that we take note of the condition that we find the homeless and have follow-up to have some kind of a plan, either city or county or joint, to address some of the, I guess, tent cities, temporary housing conditions that we're finding?
That is accurate. Officers and community resources do make contact and offer services.
Okay. Thank you, City Manager. Okay. We'll move on. Under announcements, Councilwoman Ortiz.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. City Manager took my thunder regarding Captain Forshee. We need to continue to pray for him. I just wanted to shout out grandson number 1. He will be 16 and he's looking to drive. And I'd like for all our officers to beware when he starts driving, because I don't know how that's going to work. But anyway, I wanted to wish him a happy birthday. And that's all I have, Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilman Emerson.
Nothing tonight, Mayor. Thank you.
Okay. Councilman Kell.
I'd like to say congratulations to several off the Topeka West. There's 5 that had personal high series or personal high games today. It was really fun to see them all kind of have a little bit of struggle come through, and then what was very surprising for me is Highland Park's bowling team has been very sparse the 5 years I've been involved in high school bowling around here. Not really remembering ever seeing a full team there, but today, first time this year, I've been able to see Highland Park, and it looked like a complete full team. And like I said, that was really nice to see. Give those kids at Highland Park a chance to compete. I know some say that it's due to them kind of finding a different conference and be able to feel like they can compete and not just going out and getting thrashed. So it was great to see a school like Highland Park put together a team, full team, and come out and compete and not have just a partial team that doesn't really they can do the first part, but they can't really go for awards, can't go for that unless they're individuals. So it's nice to be able to see them compete as a team for the team events today. And that is it. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Councilwoman Nager.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just want to extend my deep felt gratitude to our public safety officers who have been out and about, making sure that people are staying safe on the roads and in putting themselves in peril. I know we all are a better community for what you do. Thank you for your work. And on our part, citizens, please be careful as we continue to go through this winter weather. And also, thank you for anyone who's tuning in tonight instead of the KU State game. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Sure. Deputy Mayor Dober. Councilman Duncan.
Nothing, Mayor. Thank you.
Oh. Councilwoman Hofer.
Nothing tonight, Mayor.
Thank you. Councilwoman Hiller.
Just wanted to do a quick shout out to the Living the Dream folks, as well as the Center for Peace and Justice folks, and everybody who put together the 10 days of events over that ended yesterday on Martin Luther King holiday in the schools, march around the Capitol, big banquet with a record number of scholarships, soup supper last night at one of the churches, just tremendous community coming together through all of those events. Also, just kind of across the table, listening to all the comments about homelessness and what the issues are that people would like to see addressed, I've got a short list of topics that I think we could put together in terms of a community campaign. And I'd given Chief a shout out by email, I think, last week just to see if he saw any legal problems with it before we even took anything out of the chute. But I do hope that we can come together as a council. I think when people around this body talk about our homeless populations and their challenges, and really whenever any citizen brings up their concerns, everyone is concerned about those individuals nonetheless and wanting to do the right thing. And I'm hopeful that we can come up with sort of a menu of this is what we do, this is what we're going to support, and this is what we're not. Largely to work with them to meet the same standards we expect of all of the residents in the city. Trespassing, trash, things like that. So just I have it ready, and maybe we can start doing something on that. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilwoman Valdivia-Accola?
Thank you, Mayor. Can you hear me?
Yep, loud and clear.
Okay, thank you. You know, on the issue of the chronic unsheltered, I am glad that Councilwoman Hiller has finally spoke up about it. Being on the Public Health and Safety Committee again this year, we had initially talked and I told her that I wanted to bring this to the forefront because of how deeply it's impacting the district I serve along with Topeka. And yet after having communication about this and having more questions about EAS, which I feel Equity Access Shelter is a good first start. There's still a lot of questions with the continuation of the camps. I actually went on a tour. I will be totally honest. I do most of my shopping in District 2. Before I got sick, I went on a tour around Topeka, and I had no words for the amount of encampments I saw. The ones in South Topeka that are so absolutely close to the road by the Blind Tiger, the one by Denny's, which has to, I mean, the fire hazards itself make you just cringe. The increase in trash, et cetera, along with what we are dealing with at the river encampments by Noto and by the Mission. So it absolutely overwhelmed me and made me aware more and more that this is a Topeka issue. We understand that we are also starting to get more and more emails from constituents across the city. And initially, when speaking with Councilwoman Hiller, it had been, let's start bringing some of this to the committee level. But I believe at the point that we are at, the urgency that we are at, the complete frustration that our citizens are at, that it is something that, and I told Councilwoman Hiller this last week, that I think that we need to, as much as possible, drive this at the council level. Because if we push this back to public health and safety, then once again, we are going to find ourselves mired in meeting after meeting and it going longer and longer and longer. Citizens need to know that we are being as proactive as we can on this and to find out how EAS, along with our partners, can work to help lessen this issue. I've also heard talk that the Mission now has a new program going. I guess it's separate than the Mission, that's trying to find funding for housing that the city has been involved in meetings in, which I find very interesting and hope to get an update on that. But I really hope as a council, as a governing body, since it impacts every single one of our districts, that we can talk about this openly and come to some real solutions. Because not only the danger for the unsheltered being unsheltered, but the dangers to our citizens with the tendency towards fire and just the lack of safety that many are feeling in their communities. Thank you, Mayor.
I just want to have a brief comment about following up on what Councilwoman Hiller said. It was a great opportunity to meet with a lot of people in the community during the celebration of Martin Luther King Jr.'s birthday. I think the number of people that are getting involved with that celebration seems to grow and grow every year. And the enthusiasm And what I really heard as the tone was not just a celebration, but a call to action, using Martin Luther King's words as the direction to give us a point to where we can get started as a community. And this community is really excited about the future of Topeka, and I think that's important for us to acknowledge that it's not just a celebration about Dr. Martin Luther King and his legacy. It is a celebration of the community here in Topeka and what work has been done to bring us forward. So I feel very privileged to be able to be invited to a lot of those events, and I would encourage the community to continue their work and effort and include us all as members of the governing body when these opportunities come up. Make sure those invitations get sent out and encourage the governing body to participate where they can. I also want to make a quick comment. I won't go into a lot of detail, but I also had the opportunity, along with Deputy Mayor and City Manager, to go to the Topeka Police Department as guests so that we could, with others in the community, recognize the works of our law enforcement officers. It was really, I think, the biggest thing that really caught everybody's attention in there is when the chief introduced a group of the officers, I think they were 11 in number, who he could actually say each one of those officers saved a life this last year because of the actions they took in the field. I think that's commendable. I don't think that anybody has a real grasp, including myself, of the challenges that they face in this current climate. And to be able to have that kind of a workforce, I know we can continue to recruit and attract good quality officers to the city of Topeka when we have that kind of performance in the field. So my congratulations to all the officers and to the department for recognizing that work well done. With nothing else, there is a need to go into an executive session, one executive session this evening, if the city attorney will read.
The motion would be to recess into executive session not to exceed 30 minutes to discuss employer-employee negotiations relating to one or more unions as justified by KSA 7543-19B3. The following staff may be necessary to assist the governing body in its deliberations: City Manager Wade and other staff he deems necessary.
Okay, we've heard the need for a executive session. Is there a motion? Motion by Councilman Kell, second by Deputy Mayor Dobler. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, we will recess into executive session after a 10-minute recess. We are now. We just come out of our executive session.
Are we still in
Do
or
we
we
need
out?
it? Do we need
Well,
more
if we've
something?
come out, we've come out.
We have it.
Yeah, we have.
If we're out, we're out.
We're out.
Oh, okay.
Come out of our executive session, no action has been taken. There are no further business coming before this body. The meeting is adjourned.